The wedding hall was filled with golden lights, laughter, and the soft melody of a piano playing in the background when everything suddenly changed. The moment that was supposed to be the happiest day of her life became the most humiliating one. All eyes turned toward the bride, her trembling hands holding her bouquet, her heart pounding so loud she could barely breathe, as her groom, the man she thought she knew, stood before everyone and publicly shattered her dignity. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and the power of second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us spread more heart-touching stories like this one. The story begins with Lillian, a simple, soft-spoken woman with dreams as delicate as the lace on her wedding dress. She grew up in a small town where people believed that love was pure and promises were forever. Lillian wasn't rich or glamorous. She worked as a school teacher, finding joy in little things, children's laughter, evening walks, and her mother's gentle prayers. When she met Carter, a handsome and ambitious businessman from the city, it felt like a fairy tale come true. He was confident, charming, and made her feel seen in ways no one else ever had. Within months, their relationship became the talk of the town, a small-town girl winning the heart of a man everyone admired. But what no one saw was how slowly, beneath his perfect smile, Carter's admiration turned into control. He began to point out her flaws, the way she dressed, how softly she spoke, how she wasn't bold enough. He said he was helping her improve, and Lillian, in love and desperate to please, believed him. She thought love meant patience, that kindness could heal pride, and that someday he would see her worth. She ignored the red flags, thinking his temper and pride were just stress from work. Months passed, and the wedding day arrived, a grand event that Carter had planned to perfection. The venue glittered with chandeliers. The guests included powerful businessmen, and photographers crowded every corner. Lillian, dressed in a simple white gown her mother had helped her pick, felt both nervous and hopeful. She wanted to prove she could belong in his world, that love, not money, defined value. But destiny had a painful lesson waiting for her that day. When the ceremony began, Carter stood tall, confident, and cold. Lillian noticed something strange in his eyes, not affection but distance. As the priest began to speak, Carter interrupted with a smirk that sent whispers rippling through the crowd. He turned toward the audience and said words that froze Lillian's blood. "Before I say I do, there's something everyone here should know. I don't want to marry a liar." Gasps filled the hall. Lillian's knees nearly gave out. Her voice trembled as she whispered his name, but Carter continued, his tone cruel and mocking. He pulled out a photo from his pocket, an old picture of Lillian from years ago standing beside a man. "She told me she's never loved anyone before," Carter said loudly. "Turns out that wasn't true. This is her ex-boyfriend, and she hid it from me. How can I trust a woman who starts our marriage with lies?" The crowd erupted into murmurs. Guests exchanged glances, some judging, others pitying. Lillian stood frozen, her bouquet slipping from her hands, tears stinging her eyes. It was true, she had loved someone once before, years ago, a kind-hearted man who had died in an accident. She never spoke of it because the pain was unbearable, and she believed her past didn't define her present. But Carter turned her silence into shame. In that moment, everything she believed about love shattered. Her dreams, her dignity, her faith in the man she thought loved her. All were torn apart under the cruel glare of chandeliers and whispers. Her mother, seated in the front row, covered her mouth in horror. The priest stood speechless, and Carter, basking in his own arrogance, tossed the photo onto the floor as if he had exposed some great crime. For a few seconds, Lillian couldn't breathe. Her world tilted, but then something powerful stirred inside her, something she didn't even know she had. Slowly, she bent down, picked up the photo, and looked at it with trembling hands. Then she looked up at Carter, her tears drying into resolve. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Yes, that was someone I loved," she said, her voice soft but steady enough for the whole room to hear. "And he taught me what true love feels like, kindness, respect, and honesty. He's no longer here, but the lessons he left behind still live in me. I didn't hide him out of guilt. I kept him in my heart because he made me who I am. And if you think that loving someone in the past makes me unworthy today, then maybe it's not me who isn't ready for marriage, it's you." The room went silent. Even the murmurs stopped. Carter blinked, visibly shaken, as she continued. "You say you can't trust me because I loved before. But tell me, Carter, what kind of man humiliates the woman he claims to love in front of hundreds of people just to feel powerful? Love without respect is not love at all. I may not have your wealth or your status, but I have something you'll never understand: dignity." Her words struck like thunder. The crowd that once whispered against her now looked at her with admiration. Her mother began to cry, not from shame, but pride. And as Lillian slowly removed her veil, dropped it to the floor, and turned toward the exit, applause broke out. It started with one guest, then another, until the hall was filled with claps that echoed through every corner. Carter stood there, pale, realizing too late that he had just destroyed himself, not her. Lillian walked out of that wedding hall with her head high, leaving behind not just a broken relationship, but the part of herself that ever believed she needed someone else's approval to feel whole. She returned home that night, her dress still shimmering under the streetlights, but her heart strangely at peace. Painful as it was, she had found her strength in the ruins. Days passed and the incident spread like wildfire across town. People talked about how the bride stood tall after being humiliated, how she turned heartbreak into courage. Some criticized Carter for his arrogance, others admired Lillian for her grace. And slowly, what began as a scandal became an inspiration. But Lillian didn't care about the gossip. She returned to her simple life, back to her classroom, her books, and the children who greeted her every morning with smiles that healed her pain. Her confidence grew stronger with each day. She learned to love herself without seeking validation, to find joy in quiet victories. Months later, something unexpected happened. A local charity organization reached out to her after hearing about her story. They wanted her to speak at a women's empowerment event. At first, she hesitated. Public speaking wasn't her strength, but then she remembered how she once stood alone in that wedding hall and found her voice. She agreed. When the day came, the hall was filled again, but this time she wasn't a bride seeking approval. She was a woman with purpose. As she walked onto the stage, wearing a simple blue dress and holding a small note, her heart raced. But when she began to speak, her voice carried a quiet power that silenced the room. "I once thought love meant giving someone the power to define your worth," she said. "But love is not about losing yourself. It's about standing beside someone who helps you grow, not tear you down. When someone humiliates you to feel strong, it's not your weakness, it's theirs. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with grace." By the time she finished, many in the audience were in tears. Her story became a symbol of dignity and strength, proving that no amount of public shame can destroy a person who truly knows their worth. Ironically, Carter's company faced a major scandal months later, and he lost much of his business reputation. Lillian didn't rejoice in his downfall. She simply wished him peace and hoped he would learn that kindness, not pride, builds real success. Her story traveled far, even reaching online platforms where thousands of women commented about how they found courage after heartbreak. Lillian didn't become famous in the way she once imagined. She became something far more meaningful, an example of resilience and self-respect. Years later, she met someone new, a quiet, humble man named Trevor, who volunteered at the same charity events. He didn't try to impress her with grand gestures or perfect words. Instead, he listened. He admired her strength, her simplicity, and her heart. Their bond grew not from perfection, but from understanding. And when he proposed to her in a small garden surrounded by flowers, there were no cameras, no crowds, just love, peace, and the soft promise of two hearts healing together. When she walked down the aisle this time, there was no fear, only joy. And as she looked back on her past, she realized that sometimes life breaks you not to punish you, but to rebuild you into someone stronger, wiser, and unshakably kind. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us keep creating emotional, life-changing stories that remind us all of the power of love, respect, and forgiveness. Before we end, comment below and tell us, what do you think true strength looks like in love and in life? Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is not anger, it's walking away with grace.